Chris. So we auditioned 3 drummers for the band. 2 songs in, everybody knew it was going to be Chris. The meter, the attitude, he had a special way of setting up shots. Now, he'd worked with Elio, who was our bass player at the time before, so he kind of had an advantage. But anyway, so the second drummer played, and the third drummer tried out, whose name was Mitch. And I told Mitch, I said, well, I'll call you. And he goes, no, you won't. I said, what do you mean? He goes, Chris is your drummer, dude. He says, I'm not stupid. We all saw it, you know? I said, okay. I said, I never called him. So Chris and I played together for 7 years, probably. And at that time, you make a reasonable living, mostly 6 nights a week, 50 weeks a year. Occasionally, we'd have a back 3. And but all this stuff about talent and work, Chris worked with the metronome every day. All the rudiments, boop, bap, boop, bap. Slow at first, slowly faster, always with the metronome on his practice pad. He used to practice on his thigh, and he had an area of his leg where the nerves had all gone dead because he'd practiced so much. I never met anybody that was as dedicated to music as Chris was. And then, so how that works is on stage, because he was so in the groove and practiced. Now, Elio and I fronted the band, and Matt, but the drummer is the leader on stage. So he would count in the tunes. Luckily, we had a few bass players during his tenure, but and he ended up playing with Bruce, who was my original bass player, for at least 25 years after the Finns. So there's a huge connection there. But anyway, he made the bass players better. He was also, just because he'd practiced so much, people forget, he was so in the moment. He was always encouraging us to be badly behaved. And he was my pharmacist. And if we did the big travel day, we'd have our breakfast on Sunday morning. We'd have to drive 8 hours. Somebody goes, okay, Dave, what do you got? And he says, put it out on the table. So I'd put it out, and it'd be like a hit of acid and a hunk of hash and a bottle of Jack. And he says, well, you should roll a couple dubs now because it's going to be trouble for you later. He says, I think eat half the acid and then we'll hit the car. So, about 3-4 hours later, he goes, you're going to want to eat a bit of that hash to take the edge off the acid, maybe wash it down with some Jack or whatever. And Chris didn't really drink or use drugs, but he was just that kind of guy. He just cared. He just always did his bit. Now, Chris was always one of those guys who women just loved the guy. He was handsome. Of course, he wasn't interested in them, and he was either suspicious of them or unaware. So one time we were in Osoyoos, and we were out in my Roxy rowboat, my rubber raft in Osoyoos Lake, and it was late at night. We were a bit drunk, of course, and we had this lovely hippie lady in her white cotton dress. And so what had happened was we started a discussion about who we would be on Gilligan's Island. And of course, Chris wanted to be Mary Ann, and I wanted to be Mary Ann, and this woman wanted to be Mary Ann. And I thought it was just, she thought I'd be the skipper because I was fat and because it was my boat and I was the band leader. And I just thought, you label me, you negate me. I was pretty upset about it. Anyway, we got this big discussion, and Chris and I did the only thing that we really could at the time. We threw her off the raft. See if it makes sense. So about 2 minutes later, we're rowing around the lake, and we look, and there she is, standing on the shore in her white cotton dress, waiting for Chris. So I rowed him to shore. Another time we were playing in Kimberley, and it was funny because we got there when the week the mine closed. I remember it was like they all got pink slips. So not only was Kimberley a hole, figuratively, but it was literally a hole where a meteor had landed and they'd taken all the good ore out and left just the pollution. And anyway, so we told the people, whatever, you're screwed anyway, just party, we'll have a great time. But this waitress named Kim had a total crush on Chris. And we she said, "Oh, I'm going to come Saturday. It's my day off, and I'm going to get drunk, and I'm going to take him home, and whatever." So she does. She shows up. She gets pretty drunk, and Chris wanders off with her, and we get, that's okay. We'll play Monopoly without you. He says, okay, whatever. So we get up. We rolled our Monopoly. We went and got our snacks at 7-Eleven. In comes Chris. He runs in. He's got his 3 7-Eleven hot dogs in his little package. He goes, "She passed out. Deal me in." So it was more important to him. He was more comfortable playing Monopoly with the band. What can you say? What can you say? The guy was an incredible person. So we were playing at the Overlander in Williams Lake, and Chris knocks on my door. And I said, "What's going on?" He says, "I think we need to go shopping at San." Now, San was like a lowbrow Zellers. I don't know if you guys remember San. Anyway, it's at the Williams Lake Mall. Just coincidentally, the world's largest piggy bank is at the Williams Lake Mall too. Pretty impressive. So we go to San. He says, "Well, I think you're going to have to fight Elio tonight." I said, because Elio and I would do this fake wrestling stuff. I said, "Okay, that makes sense." So he says, "Well, first off, you need some black isotoner gloves, right?" So we get them. They're on special. I buy them, and we get them, and we're going to take them and then he says, "You got to get some black double knit underwear." And so I do. And he says, "You got to get a black balaclava." Okay. And then he even picked my name, which is Ivan D. Terrible, would be my wrestling name. D, of course, for dog shit. So that night, the crowd was a little dull. The people showed up, but we wanted to get a reaction out of these guys. And so I disappear. The band starts playing Peter Gunn, and I come out with my Dayton boots, black double knit underwear, pulled up my crack, isotoner gloves, and a balaclava. And I go out and I challenge Elio. Elio puts down his guitar and dives on me. And we wrestled and wrestled. We only stopped to sniff the stripper pole. We just went break, and then we fought again. Anyway, that was one of those great road trips. Years later, I rented a sound system to Laurie Jordan out of my shop, and they went out and played the Overlander, and the owner told him about that. He said that was the craziest thing that ever happened in his bar. Now, after the Finns, Chris worked with Rick Tippy. He worked with Bruce for very many years. He did a lot of shows with Mike Norman, and then when Mike Norman lost his battle with cancer, that was tough for Chris because he'd done all his shows with Mike. But anyway, Chris went on to play with Rocket Science and a whole bunch of other great bands. And, we'd always have the yearly Monopoly game, and he'd show up for that. And we had a Finns reunion at the Fox in 2017, and his playing was, of course, sublime. And he eventually, he lost his battle to cancer. But, Chris was the most dedicated musician I ever knew, and more than anything, he was my friend. Chris.